possibility, and now this, oh, well, that really, and so I just wanted to know if you could speak to that.
Right, one of the thematic things, and again, I think history is obvious, the most obvious statement in the world, and history repeats itself. And there really isn't anything new, and what this looks at a very basic level is again, minstrelsy. And I don't talk a lot about that in this section, but it is, the minstrelsy became, it seems to me, a template for American entertainment. And so that's one point that I'm trying to make. And then another point that I'm trying to make is that how closely entertainment and the amusement of the masses parallels political kinds of manipulation. There's another point I was going to make. I'm old and I forgot. Does that speak to your question? And then if you have a comeback, then maybe I'll think of what it was I was going to say in the second place. But there are parallels. And again, one of the things that runs through this is the influence of African American culture on American culture. And that's why there are all these rhythms. If you read the book, all of these rhythm is talked about a great deal. And one of the ways it seems to me that African Americans have had a tremendous effect on America is through the whole notion, this almost stereotypical notion of motion, of rhythm. So that all through the book there is this kind of almost relentless African American pulse that runs under all of this history. And at various points it bubbles up and takes over, and it subside again, and it will bubble up and take over for a while. But it constantly moves forward. I could almost make a case for Obama and the kind of things that led to his moment and rise, and then wherever that's going to go, and that's going to subside, and then 10 years from now, a whole other kind of thing will happen. And another interesting kind of thing that is endemic in this is how culture is always comes from the other, comes from the outside. When it's whoever the kind of downtrodden of the moment is, that's essentially where the kind of cultural energy comes from. Whether it's African Americans, whether it's gays, whatever, it's always this kind of thing that somehow the greater populace is interested in and is attracted to, and it changes them in ways they don't always understand. One of the last images in this book is Theodore Roosevelt doing a cakewalk in the White House. This whitest of white men, somehow this whole African American thing has gotten in him. And the whole last section of the book is about theorems and very kind of scientific, but how viruses get in a body and how it changes that body. So, Carol.
Hi, could you talk about the role of cinema and how cinema is organized and structured in your process and the structure of the book?
And again, one of the things that happened with this book is it ran so long that I had to find a place to cut it. And so where the actual title, Birth of a Notion, it's a parody on Birth of a Nation, which is where the book was going to end originally. Birth of a Nation was like the pinnacle of American cultural possibilities at that moment in relation to movies. You get an indication of the beginning of movies here. But by the time that D.W. Griffith created, produced, and released Birth of a Nation, it was, again, it was the beginning of motion picture, the American motion picture possibility. But it was a totally racist portrayal of African Americans. So again, it's that coming together of these two things. There are riffs in this book on the whole notion of motion pictures, but I think it's more in the second volume. You may have read this since I did. But there, again, just in terms of techniques, there are all of these movie kinds of techniques which play in your mind. I mean, there's the fade in, I think, that I began with. There's the cross cut. There's the, kind of dollying back for the big picture. All those kinds of things. So that language runs through this, and it's a part of that creative writing part of me to manipulate and create images in people's minds. Again, it probably doesn't even come close to answering your question. Todd,
my question is about sound. As you were reading, I occasionally closed my eyes, and I found
I thought you were asleep.
Well, the sound will kept me awake and evoked images and very and associations in the mind's eye, so to speak. And I wondered if you had some sense of that as a creator.
Totally. I mean, that was the fun part of it. How do I take this hard information and somehow make it how can I include it in an interesting way in this kind of gumbo of styles and things that I'm trying to do here. And again, I'm always first of all a creative writer. And it's about images, it's about language. I don't know how much you can hear kind of wordplay, et cetera, and basically the whole thing is written in a 12-beat meter, which in my simplistic mind is like parallel to the blues. So hopefully you should be able to pat your foot to it as you read it. And again, I advise everybody, if indeed you read, to read it aloud, because I wrote it for the ear as much as the eye. So it's this combination of all of these playwriting, poetry, blues, film script, novel, all of these things I'm trying to bring in service of getting this performance out.
I'm wondering how you think about your audience for this book. I mean, certainly it speaks to writers and poets, but I'd like you to say, in short, what's your message to historians? As a writer, what's your message?
That I've got my eye on. Folks are watching at one level. And again, it's my attempt to make it interesting, possibly to people who don't read history. Because I don't know anybody that liked history in high school, except kind of weird people that became historians, et cetera, et cetera. And again, I think it's because it's, and I can't specify the method of its presentation, but there are these other kinds of possibilities and ways to think about it and play with it and have it presented to you. And I know that doesn't speak to what I sense is the root of your question.
Well, I do historical research and archival research, and I'm always considering how to broaden my audience so that it speaks to a wider group of people than the little academics that I typically speak to.
Right.
And I think your book travels well, but I think historians would need to know how to read it, know how to appreciate it, know what you're doing and how it can inform history.
Right. And again, I'm not apologetic in terms of it not being what they want it to be. And that, at some level, may be what it's about. I mean, it's, because again, I think that what official history does is or what it has done, and again, particularly from my point of view as an African-American male, it has been an attempt to humiliate me, to continue for